Looking at you. Yeah, let's go.
What would you make of just your team's offensive performance?
Yeah, very poor performance. Yeah, very, very disappointing across the board. Obviously the first 4 drives we didn't do anything, and got our team in a hole because of it. And you just can't play football like that offensively. And there were some bright spots. There were some things that that were very positive individually and collectively, but all in all, a very disappointing performance for us as an offensive unit.
Was it surprising to you? Was there any signs throughout the week or that day?
I think that's a fair question. Yeah, I mean, I think the short week, and we had two live practices, and I didn't really perceive. The answer to that is yes and no. We weren't as sharp as maybe that you would hope to be, but it wasn't anything. I don't think that was alarming. And I've been a part of all that. I've been a part of where the week was a mess and the game is a thing of beauty, and I've been a part of where the week was beautiful and the game was a mess. It goes. We've all seen that as coaches, and so you do try to look back and look for, clues. Did I see this coming? Did I see the slow start coming? I didn't, but we certainly did, and it affected us in a very negative way.
See, there's some pass protection issues on the right side. How are you guys evaluating that, and whether we need to mix it up or change something?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing you always look at is from an offensive coordinator standpoint is what could I do better to help our guys? Obviously, when you get in a situation that we got in, because of our poor performance early on, and I'm talking offensively, like we got in a situation where you're down a significant amount of points fairly early on in the game, and now you're a little bit off script. You're a little bit, let's say not off script, but you're throwing the ball more, and they know you're throwing the ball more, and so then you're putting your guys in a little bit of a vulnerable position there from a protection standpoint. And so the answer to that question is it's like an all-encompassing evaluation: is what could we have done differently? Could we have done some things? And we did some things to help in protection, but not all the time. Could we have done more to help our guys schematically? Obviously we got to avoid getting in obvious passing situations where everybody in the whole stadium knows it's about to be a pass. That's what the defensive line wants. A defensive coordinator wants when you're 3rd and 16 and everybody in the stadium knows they got to throw the ball here. That's a tough situation to be in. We got to avoid those, but we also got to improve, in how we're calling it and how we're executing when it comes to pass protection.
What have the first 2 weeks maybe meant for your run game, just because you haven't been able to go to it because you've been playing catch-up?
Well, that's true. I mean, I was really pleased with the way the front in the called runs early in the game about how we were targeting things and how we were playing and moving the line of scrimmage and creating holes for our backs, and our backs were running hard. And really, in retrospect, I think even despite the gap in the score, that's something we probably should have held on to just a little bit more, as far as the run game. So I think we made some strides there, and I liked what we did, even though that didn't show up really because we kind of got away from it. But what we have to do is we have not had the opportunity, or we hadn't established what our identity is just yet. And going into week 3, that's a challenge, and we've got to make sure and get that fixed and corrected to where we get our identity of we want to be a physical football team, and our guys are playing hard and physical, but we've got to be a balanced offense. And obviously the other day we started off, I think, fairly balanced as far as the calls go, and then it got really skewed late in the game. So the games have been kind of quirky, but that's nobody's challenge, or we created our own challenges in that regard because we haven't been able to stay on the field enough early in the first half.
What you characterize as a poor performance in these first 2 games, how have you gone about being so much more successful in the red zone?
Well, I think guys are making plays, and I think we worked hard in the spring and the summer and fall camp of trying to be a little bit more rigid there about what we're doing, and a systematic approach a little bit about what our guys can expect. And so right now we're executing at a nice level. That's going to be important that we keep that up, all the while bringing our normal operating open field early downs, early in the game execution along with that. But that has been a bright spot for us, and obviously that's something that we want to be able to continue.
What have you seen from the vertical passing game? Is this something you want to get more out of, stretch the field a little bit more?
It is, and I know our guys want to do that, and there was some some plans to get involved in that, and they just didn't unveil themselves the other day for various reasons. And But I'm very confident in our ability to do that. I really am. And, that's going to be something that we're going to be challenged a lot during this season with low safeties and low corners. That's just the nature of this business and this league. That's what they're going to do, especially when they know we want to try to run the football. And we've got to be able to loosen people up better and more effectively.
Quarterback through these first 2 weeks specifically.
I think he's really tough. No, I don't think he is. He's tough. And, he's displayed that. And I think he's a good player, and he's a young player that learns every time he's out. But I think he's a good football player, and he's a really good quarterback. And I think he's, for the first couple of weeks, he's played pretty well. There's some things he'd like to have back the other day. But again, when, the O-line and him and everybody gets put under more stress when we're in obvious passing situations, and when we're balanced, he's going to be better for it. But his legs have been a really nice bolster to our offense. And, that's been a really nice addition to us, and I like where he's at. Things to improve, certainly. We got to take care of the ball at the end of the game and keep the game alive. Thought he made a really tight window throw that was an accurate throw, but probably from a decision standpoint needs to be flipped out in the flat and live for another down, because we have enough time there to get back in it with a score. So just little things like that. There's always something to teach and learn off of, but I do like where Luke's at.
Situations, what do you feel like that identity is being where the struggles have been there?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously try to, I wouldn't say a gimmick play. That's something that we've practiced probably for 8 weeks last year and never called in the game. And then we put it back in for, week 2. We're very confident in, Griffin's ability to execute that. And just quite frankly, I mean, like they made an incredible play on the play. I mean, the mic just triggered right on the exact right timing of the snap. He didn't see it till late and just ran through and disrupted the gap where we thought we could have access to. And, sometimes when you draw them up, you don't, they make plays, and they made a play. And so that's kind of, I know you didn't ask me specifically about that one, but we have to be better in that down and distance. I mean, that's a non-negotiable, and there's certainly some things in the works there to help address some of that, and continually, like we're always evaluating that, like what can we do this week, and like what needs to be our focus and how we can do it. And so we're always talking through those things. We got to be better in those short yardage situations. That was a critical moment in the game. To be honest with you, we were 2nd and 4. This has happened to us 3 times. We get on pace early down. We get 2nd and 4. We flip a hitch out there, and we end up being short, which we just shouldn't. We just shouldn't be put in that situation. But then we get to 3rd and 1 and we don't get it. Now we're punting, and it has a snowball effect. That's called offensive execution, right? And we just we're not executing in sync for 4 quarters yet. We've had 8 quarters now, and we've had some quarters where we've shown up, but we have to show up every quarter, in particular, in conference play.
This is too broad, but for plays like that, like those gimmick or gadget, whatever you want, how do you know when the right time? Like, is there any one thing that informs you more than other things, like when to kind of dial that up?
I mean, I think you have to do your research on who you're playing, what you're playing, the flow of the game. We were very clear about going into the game that our first 3rd and 1, that's what everybody in the whole team knew, that's what we were going to do on the first 3rd and 1. So, I mean, you could see in the game, as soon as he took the field, our guys started lining up in the formation because they knew what was happening. And so I think when you do that, you feel good about that as a coordinator, as a coach, when your guys have practiced it and know what to anticipate, and you're confident and be able to execute it. And just, honestly, they probably just made a better play than we did, and or had a better play call than we did, and that does happen in football. It's my job to ensure that doesn't happen very often, and that's the challenge for me, is to make sure that that's part of football. Those guys make plays, and we go against good coaches too, is making sure we don't get stopped on something that is, is it calculated? Is it a risk? Is it really a good sound call? Those types of things.
Team play Saturday defensively. They rank up with some of the teams you played before defensively.
Yeah, very impressive. Yeah, very impressive. And, along the lines of some of the great defenses we played last year. I mean, just extremely athletic, disruptive. They come from all over the place. That's a very challenging preparation in that regard. Just schematically part of it, and then it's kind of almost like the polar opposite of Iowa to a large degree. Iowa is so systematic and rigid and well coached, and these guys are just as well coached in a system that's, a little bit more creative and freestyle. Not freestyle, that's a bad word, but just a little bit more creative. And they come from a lot of different angles, and they cut their players loose, and it's very impressive to watch them play. It'll be a great challenge for us.
For 2 weeks, you've seen least 3 tight ends have success in a game. You know, do you like what you see out of that room with Tip and Griffin and even Henry Boyer?
I do. I like where we're at, and Tanner Arkin would be the 4th one that we feel comfortable with being in the game right now. And but I like where, you know, Griffin's he's got a little something to him that we've kind of recognized over the past year or so, and I know our quarterbacks really are really comfortable with him in like 3rd down situations, and they are as our other guys as well. But so Griffin's kind of earned the right to get in there and be a presence for us in passing situations. But we also ran the ball behind him a couple times the other day, and we're going to continue to do that. You know, when he's in the game, we're going to run the football. And but Tip made a nice play, and I trust those guys, and we need all those guys to play for us because certainly as they control, attempt and strain to control the C gap, that creates opportunities in the passing game that can help us. So I've been really pleased with what they've done so far.
And Beatty kind of made the most of his opportunities. Is he a guy we might see a little more of? And can he and Isaiah be on the field at the same time?
Yeah, they can. You know, Isaiah's got, and really Hank does too. They've got enough flexibility. They could go a bunch of different positions, but Hank's probably most natural and comfortable in the slot for us. And Isaiah has a little bit of flexibility to go outside. But yeah, Hank did a nice job. Hank is who we all know Hank is. I mean, like, he's Mr. Steady and consistent, and when you flip it to him, he's going to catch it, and he's a good run after the catch. He's just a good football player. So I was glad to see him catch a few balls and get involved, because he didn't get involved in the first week. As far as from a catching standpoint, I continue to be somebody that I'm sure will get opportunities to make plays for us.
Xavier Williams isn't going to sneak up on anybody this year. So what's the adjustment for him, for you to maybe adjust to what defenses are focusing on?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. I mean, like, we got, I think, play 20 the other day. We were either play 20 or 21 in the game, and he hadn't touched it yet. Now, we had the starter was designed to potentially an RPO to him. The play, I think 8 or 10 was an RPO designed to potentially get to him, and they covered it down both times and gave us the run option, But then all of a sudden, play, I think 21 or 22, he gets the ball and bam, explosive play. And then 23, he gets the ball again. And, like, he's a guy that, even though they know we're going to get the ball to him, we got to find ways to get it to him when everybody knows that he's going to get the ball, because he's too valuable to us not to do that.
Is there anything you guys can do in practice to get a quicker start in the first half, other than that first script drive 2 weeks ago? It's kind of been slow out of the gates.
Yeah, I think we always are evaluating that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where it starts, and we try to simulate the game the best we can in practice. Sideline huddle, start it off, here, let's go play the game. But to your point, like, that's the only way to get it fixed is through practice, right? That the only way to get these things that are challenged. You just don't wave a magic wand and say, guys, we got to get this fixed. You have to go grind, and you have to approach it like that. So yeah, it starts in practice for sure. The way you execute, your attention to detail, and the way I plan, and the things I present to our offensive football team and our coaching staff, like the details, and then the way we execute those things in practice, that's the pathway to getting more consistent, is to go out and earn your way through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and that's going to be our challenge this week.
The amount that Luke has used his feet, is that kind of what you envisioned when you got him, or has that kind of changed just the way the first 2 games?
It's about what I thought. I think it's very similar to what I did previously before I came here, and that's what I was hoping to get out of him. And so obviously didn't anticipate him having a lot of guys, a lot of great backs, a lot of great running backs that played college football and never probably had a 78, it was out of 75-yard, whatever it was, a long touchdown run like that. That's pretty rare for that to happen in college football. So I certainly didn't anticipate him ripping off, I knew he was capable of doing that. So that's been a good addition to us. But at the end of the day, we want our quarterback to be in the pocket, delivering the ball on time, in rhythm, to help our passing game, making good decisions on whether you're handing it, pulling it, and throwing it. And then anything he supplements beyond that is a positive for our offense.
All good, guys?
Thanks, everybody.
Coach Henry, let's start with a statement for you guys, and then
I hope you guys are doing well today. It's obvious and apparent that we didn't play well defensively for the second week in a row. And that falls squarely on my shoulders. I think when you talk about like having a good defensive system, and then you suffer defeat like that, and in which we did. I think you open up yourself for other things that come in the future, and I think you have to explore options of everything you do from a schematic standpoint to how you install. Like you look at everything, and I just think for us moving forward from a defensive standpoint, like everything from our players to our coaches, like everything has to be on point. Not saying that it was before, but like when you take a look at the last 2 games, right, and you realize what's taking place, right? I think we had 10, I think it's 8 or 9 touchdowns scored, but on those 8 or 9 possessions, right, 7 of them or 8 of them resulted in 15-yard plus penalties, right? And so a coach always says this: before you can win, you got to keep from losing, and obviously we're doing some things to self-inflict and to hurt us from a standpoint of not being able to recover from it, right? But then when we do have those moments, we can't let those moments snowball into even bigger moments as the game kind of takes place. And so I just want to start off with a statement for you guys and open it up for questions from there.
Is it a lot about just slowing down the running game? And if it is, are there some things alignment-wise and play-calling-wise that you can do to try to slow down the opponent's running game?
Well, I think it boils back down to technique, fundamentals, and details. Obviously we ran this defense all spring ball. We ran it all fall camp. I thought we were pretty good. I still think we're really, really good. But when we just don't do our job and don't do our assignment, it's glaring, right? We are a single gap defense, and if one guy is out of his gap, right, it's not a 5-yard game, right? It's not a 3-yard game, right? And so I think when you see things like this and you expose yourself to things like this, you open up Pandora's box, and right, like as the guy that's the leader of it, I have to take everything into consideration on how we operate from a schematic standpoint, and is that the best thing for us moving forward?
So what's that process been like the last few days with you, Brett, and the defensive staff?
It's been challenging, to say the least, man. It's been the last few days have been really, 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 really challenging. Not just for myself, but for our players and our defensive staff, because we all have the same expectation, right? And that's greatness. Like we have an expectation level of playing defense the way we know how to play defense, and when we don't reach that goal, right, it's maddening, it's frustrating, it's not how we operate, and so like for us not to have success, like the way we run our defense has been, oh yeah, man, from our players to our coaches, like it's been extremely frustrating. But I think in these times and in these moments, right, you find out who some of your bell cows are and who you can lean on in terms of your players. And so what I will give a lot of credit to our players too is they kept fighting, right? It wasn't always pretty, it wasn't always clean. They kept fighting, and if they continue to do that, I think I know we can clean up a lot of the mistakes and errors we made from a technical and fundamental standpoint.
One of your leaders, Johnny Newton, on Friday night kind of summed it up by saying he thinks a lot of these guys on defense are living off of last year.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that on tape, and are you seeing that maybe in practice?
No, I wouldn't say I'm seeing that on tape or seeing that in practice. I think obviously after an emotional loss, right? Obviously, Johnny never minces his words, you know what I'm saying? But I just think from the standpoint of our players, the expectation is to be great, right? And when you fall short of that, because you have done it so well for an extended period of time, when it doesn't go according to his plan, right? I think that's a natural reaction. No, I haven't seen us from a fundamental and technical standpoint just lose ourselves over the last practices, over spring ball, over fall camp, because I think that's something that you pick up immediately within the framework of our defense. You pick it up immediately because you see it immediately. You know what I'm saying? And so could it be human nature sometimes for a young man who's had success in the past, or even a coach who had success in the past, to kind of hang his hat on what was done previously? Yeah, maybe. But I could just tell you now from our coach's perspective, we don't give a damn about the past, man. Like, I think it's allowed us this opportunity to be where we are. But we know moving forward, like whatever the plan is in place, like we have to make sure it's corrected. Because that was it was completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable for the university. It's unacceptable in which our brand and how we play defense, man. And so, to Jeremy's point, like the last couple of days, fellas, have been really, really challenging, really hard. It's been a lot of really good conversations that have came from that. But I think most importantly, it's been some dialogue of some things and some tweaks that we needed to make from a schematic standpoint in which teams are trying to attack us.
What's the challenge for you to pull whatever lever, push whatever button schematically to change if it's dramatically different, whatever ways you've been working up to this point?
Well, I don't think you go into a wholesale change in week two of the season, right? But I do think that you can make minor tweaks, right, that can put your players in position to be successful, whether it's a certain stance, right, whether it's a certain key, in which we had before. Maybe they were keying a tight end and now they need to key a back, right? Whether it's a certain alignment, whether that's talking about with a post player or with a corner. You know, it's those kind of small tweaks, right? And then just from a schematic standpoint, right, being able to not only live in our normal front, but jump in and out of multiple fronts and still be able to have overlap in our defense, right? So if the ball does pop, right, it's not going for 10, 15, 20, 30. You have overlap in the defense and you allow guys to, at the second level for sure, to get it down.
I seem to remember in the spring and fall camp, you guys had talked about you were playing fast. Do you feel like that's translated to the first two games?
Yes and no. I think in elements in which we see normal formations, yes, I do think. But I think for our players, right, if they don't see something that they hadn't seen, a lot of times they may be a little slower. And that's where we as coaches, that's where I have to do a better job at giving them pictures that they probably won't see. They may see once during the course of a game. In Kansas case, right, we saw a bunch of pictures that me as myself as a coach for the first time, right, that's my first time ever seeing some of them pictures playing football, you know what I'm saying, let alone trying to get it to my players, you know what I mean? So I think at the end of the day, just preparing them for just the unconventional of any team, not just Kansas, but of any team moving forward, and just having a checklist of all those things in which teams can attack you.
Is 2 games enough to make personnel changes, or how will you guys evaluate that going forward?
I think you make personnel changes after any game, you know, based on how a young man is playing, right? Is it so at the end of every game, right? What I try to do is just like, did this young man not play well or screw up on this particular play? Was it a technique error or was it a schematic error? Right. And so it was a combination of the two of them this previous game. The game before, it was probably a little more technical things, you know. And so when you start seeing a little more schematic things showing up in how a game is called and the operation of a game, you start to, okay, well, we have to make some minor adjustments or some adjustments wholesalely, right, to fix the problems that we're having. But if it's fundamentals, right, I think that falls back on the young man, and I think it falls back on his coaches ultimately. You know, I can promise you this: we're putting the best players out there that give us the chance to win, right? We're not just throwing guys out there and they hadn't had a good week of practice, or we don't think that they can help us get the victory.
What jumps out at you about the Penn State offense on film?
I mean, they're really, really good. They're really talented. They do what they do. I think they do it really well. The quarterback, Aller, I mean, he has a beautiful arm, right? He's long. He's pretty. He's pretty athletic and moves extremely well in the pocket. They got 2 running backs who I believe can start anywhere in the country. They are very physical downhill runners, right? They pride themselves on running the ball. They have a couple tight ends who I think are physical at the point of attack. They're like extensions of their O-line. They line them up outside. They line them up inside. They line them up in the backfield, right? You have a receiving core, right? They may not have the Penn State names theoretically of a first-round draft pick, but those guys, they bust their butt. They can get open. They have great hands. I think they do a really good job down the field of being in phase and catching the ball at its high point when they are throwing the ball, and they're tremendous run blockers, right? They take a lot of pride in that, and so I think that you have a really good offense. You got a really good offense, and then you complement that because they play really good defense as well.
Are there a lot Different than the first two teams that you faced offensively?
Yeah, they are. They are a tad bit. I just think for what they run from a schematic standpoint, they are. I mean, the quarterback's a tad bit different because he isn't as jittery as those first two cats. He does have some athletic ability, but he's just a longer, right, bigger target. You know what I mean? And although the other two, the first two game opponents, right, had probably a little more skill than him from a running standpoint, right? I'm not sure if they had the just wholesalely, right? Penn State's O-line is ridiculous. They had the wholesale talent like Penn State has all around, from their O-line to their second to their D-line, right, to their running backs, to their linebackers, to their wide receivers, right? Penn State, in my opinion, Penn State has a complete football team. Not to say that the other two teams didn't, but like I think Penn State makes up for it in every aspect of the offense.
Fred will talk about Matt's help, but just broadly, when that time comes, what's the process of reincorporating him into what you guys do?
You get your best players on the field as fast as you can. If Matt tells me today that he's 100%, right, I don't think you just throw him into the fire, but I think you allow him to rotate and just based on his comfort level, if he can go, you know, you try to put the young man in a position to be successful and I mean he knows this. I mean, he called me after the game, you know, because he knows how we play defense, and he was just as frustrated, you know what I'm saying? And so like just the care of that young man in particular, and how bad he wants to be back. If he is back this week, you couldn't find a better week for him to come back.
Based off of what you're saying, do you foresee, like you're talking about schematic and personnel, is there operational changes as well as, you know, Andy being in the box? Does he have to be on the field? Does Aaron have to call the plays from the box? Has that caused those conversations?
Well, we've had a lot of those conversations. We're still divulging through a lot of them, being that it's only Monday. But right now, everything's on the table. Everything's on the table because, right, the standard of defense in which we play is just unacceptable.
What's your identity to be on defense?
I want us to be tough, smart, and dependable, right? I don't want us to get penalties, right, at very crucial moments. I want us to give ourselves a chance from a schematic standpoint and a technical standpoint to be fundamentally sound and have an opportunity to play the next play without giving the team, right, 10, 15, 20, right, 30 yards because we decide to do something after the play's over.
Based on your experience as a player and as coach, what's going wrong now be fixed in a week? Is it something? Can the turnaround be like that?
Absolutely. I mean, I've lived this movie before, unfortunately, right? Like week of Virginia, you know, we decided to make a wholesale change and giving up a bunch of yards and how we were attacked, and we did it, and we kind of flipped the script there moving forward. And so season ain't over, right? Obviously we're getting into conference play, but we still have a long road ahead. But I don't want to have any more of these conversations in terms of coming into you guys and just talking about how bad we've played defensively, right? That's my goal, obviously, as the leader.
How much does that hurt? How deflating is that when the opponent gets 15, 20, 25, 30 yards?
They're massive. You know, we did a study in the off season. You know, if you have three or more like explosives, and what we consider explosive, right? A run of 16 yards or more, a pass of 21 yards or more, your chances of winning and playing good defense are really slim, right? When you have three or more of those in the course of a game, right? 2-yard gains, 3-yard gains, occasionally maybe a 10-yard game. But when you're having explosive plays that amass, right? It was a bunch of plays in the first half, a bunch of plays in the second half of the Kansas game. When you have a bunch of explosive plays that amass for 250 or 300 yards of offense, that's not good. That's not good defense, and so you have to look at everything.
Anything else for Coach Henry? Oh, it's after your first couple games. How much have you kind of learned about the process of being a play caller?
It's I would say that you're responsible for it. You know what I'm saying? Like what you put on tape, right? How the game operates, right? No matter what has happened before, like it's your responsibility to get it right. You know, and I think that I think if I wasn't ready for the moment, I wouldn't have been called to be in the moment. And so I learned a lot from it, just in terms of, right, how our players responded, right. What I did love about, although the Kansas loss you don't like it at all, but I don't think our players quit at any point during that game. And so I think it's a lot to take from that because they could have easily laid down, and I challenged them at halftime, and I thought that they were, although it wasn't perfect, I thought that they were better in the second half moving forward. But just learning from it, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot thus far. I've learned it's hard, and sometimes when it gets hard, you have to stick to your guns. You got to believe in the people around you, and you got to do whatever it takes to get it right, And so right now we're in a foxhole, doing whatever it takes to get it right, and we will.
Anything else for Coach Henry?
Appreciate you guys.
Jump right into Coach B. Start us off with a statement and get any questions.
Well, obviously excited to get into Big Ten play, but before we could jump into our Penn State prep, obviously a long flight back on Friday night, and then Saturday for us as coaches. Saturday and Sunday were a lot of personal inventory, not just the Kansas game, but also the first two games, just as a collective unit to see what people see of us. I think that's a very important thing for us as coaches to recognize what our opponents are seeing against us, offense, defense, special teams. So really took a self-inventory on Saturday. Had a lot of good conversations, but also then kind of came back and revisited them on Sunday, and then obviously begin to jump into our Penn State prep. They played obviously an early game on Saturday, so we weren't going to get that film until about 2:30 that day. So took kind of a collective breath to get to there. Amazingly, we're pretty healthy. I think coming out of two games, had a couple guys get some injuries on Saturday, but nothing that's going to eliminate anybody out. I believe I heard you guys ask Aaron. Matt Bailey should be back with us this week. It'd be nice to get him back in rotation, not just from a pure skill standpoint, but he just kind of embodies everything. I think in the back end, obviously we knew coming into this year we were going to replace 4 or 5 back end players, and not just routine players, really good players. So he brings a little substance back there that got a lot of game experience a year ago, not just in the games, but the preparation for the games. He's been a little bit of an assistant coach out there during the field, on the field during practice, also during the home game last week. But obviously excited to get him. Also should get Zeke Holmes back a little bit this week. He's going to basically be cleared, and what he does this week will kind of determine what he can do on Saturday. So excited to get 2 more defensive players back with us. Continued growth out of some of our other guys offensively. Julian obviously left the game with a dislocated finger, but he'll be back with us. Shouldn't have any issues there. And then really nobody else from a health standpoint. So really Penn State, obviously a very, very good football team, complete football team. Offensively, very explosive, very productive. Got a lot of different weapons at all skill positions. A good offensive line. Guys that we recruited, guys at Norzad, their interior player was a guy we had on visit here, so we know a lot about some of these guys. That's what's kind of fun now in our league play. We'll start to see a lot of guys that we not only know because we compete against some guys that we recruited, and you can kind of go a little bit different perspective once that begins to happen. And defensively, I've known Manny for a long time. I don't believe we've ever crossed paths actually on the field, but tremendous respect for him as a coordinator and what he does, and they bring a lot of different looks, a lot of different pressures. So tremendous challenge. And special teams, they have transitioned a little bit since we were there last time. So some new phases, even though it's a game just 2 years ago, it's a completely different script for us, basically in game planning. So with that, open up for questions.
Aaron had mentioned it's been a challenging few days. What's been challenging about it then secondary?
One of the things we commonly talk about in our program, it's, one of the best things that can happen is you grow a lot from difficult conversations, right? And obviously when you have things that you need to correct and things that need to be done, those conversations aren't as easy as when they are very successful, right? So, for Aaron, for the defensive staff, for the offensive staff, really just to go back, revisit so that we can move forward is never easy. I think about it all the time, right? Like half of the teams in college football lose every weekend, right? And here at Illinois, to have a loss hurt, and it hurts a lot of people, right? Like obviously I can read the tone of your articles, right? And people that write, right? It matters, right? It matters to people in the community. It matters to our administration. So to have that relevance, I think, is a good thing. But also the disappointment of that makes it a challenge as well. So we had to have some conversations, but on the same point, you can't let Kansas beat you twice, right? So we got to jump into our preparation, learn from our mistakes, make the adjustments we need to correct, and especially for our players and coaches.
From your assessment watching the film, what are the issues defensively for you? And what are some of those, possible corrections and things you look at when you assess it?
Well, I think that you can appreciate, right? Like we're getting ready to play Penn State, so I don't really want to talk about what we think the issues are, right? That would be a little bit of a silly comment, but I would just tell you, for us, I think it's obvious that if you give up a certain number of yards, if you give up a certain number of points, you give up a certain number of third down conversions, you do certain things, it's just not a recipe for success. So we got to correct the things that we believe in, especially on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. There's some things we've done well. Second half in both games defensively, we've made some good adjustments and made it happen. We just spotted them too much on the front end. Obviously, end of half has been an issue defensively. Offensively, we've done some really good things in the red area, which was a point of contention a year ago. Some things we really concentrated on that side of it. We've really done offensively good at the end of halves, right? But obviously, the flip side of it, defensively, we've given up 2 scores at the end of half, which we can't do because that really has been kind of, in my opinion, the deciding drive on both the game that we won against Toledo and the game that we lost at Kansas. That end of half score was a really big part of the game.
Obviously, these are 2 good teams you've played. How much you gain from that 2-game sample size as a staff? Like how much?
Yeah,
you learn about
obviously I wasn't here when either one of these games were scheduled. You look around the league and you see who teams are playing and what the results are, right? And I knew that these were going to be two games out of the gate before we got into Penn State that were going to be very difficult games to prepare to win, and obviously we come out of it 1-1. Love to be 2-0, but we could have been 0-2, so we're 1-1, and we're going to live with it and roll with it. I think the biggest thing that we also took a year ago at this time, we were sitting in the exact same scenario. We were a 1-1 football team after a disappointing Friday night road game loss, right? And so there's a little bit of a rewrite of that, although completely different season scripts and all that goes into it. But it's not like we haven't been here before. I believe Penn State is ranked 7th, which is exactly what they were ranked last time we were playing them. So there's a lot of commonalities that we've seen before, right? And I think the dreams and aspirations of our room haven't changed just because of the results of one game.
Building off that, how do you keep that perspective with the guys? That you've been doing this a long time. Like, you have a lot of season left, although you're still frustrated with the results.
Well, I get the question, but I really we do take a 1-0 mentality approach. We just one of the things that we did this year, we didn't even really have season goals. I just said this is going to be the goal of our season is to go 1-0 on a weekly basis, and obviously the first week we were able to achieve that. Last week we didn't. So it allows you in the most difficult moments to stay on the task at hand. So we have 12 opportunities to prepare a game week preparation and execution to see where we get on game day, and I think that's really a way to kind of keep the guys moving forward and not have them dwell too much on the past. I would tell you as coaches, what I've learned in 15 years as head coach, 30 years in this business, coaches take it a lot harder than players, just because it just stays with you a little bit longer. Players got a million different things. I'm not saying it affects them. It definitely affects us. Those players came in, I think, in our building on Saturday. It was an NCAA by rule day off, so we couldn't meet with them, but I had a lot of players walking by, a lot of guys reach out to me, a lot of guys in the building. We had soft tissue recovery and the treatment room open, and I know we had a large amount of, the majority of our 74-man travel roster was through. Yeah.
You guys are supposed to have a pregame show here on Saturday with Fox.
Oh, yeah.
That's been changed. Just curious what your reaction was and maybe when that became clear to you.
It really wasn't a big deal to me to begin with. So when it was mentioned to me on Saturday, whenever I was made aware of that, I literally just took that as a responsibility of me, right? Like my responsibility as a head coach was to win football games, and obviously they have the right to choose that. I don't understand the process. Like I was kind of a little bit when it first popped up, like, okay, they're announcing this far in advance. I just had never been a part of that, so I'm all for it. Yeah, giddy up rodeo. But I also literally, I remember the week of the Kansas game, there was something that popped up that we were going to start to announce things about the Penn State game. I said, whoa, right? Like, I don't want to put that out in front of, that's just how I'm wired, right? So, ironically, the whole way it worked out plays out that way. But obviously, Penn State won, we didn't. And for us to do what we want to do, we got to focus on the task at hand. I don't really get worked up about things I don't have a voice in.
And Aaron will continue to call the defense and be the coordinator, or from an operational standpoint, is that something that's on the table for change as well?
I think that's probably the most ridiculous question you've ever asked me, but I'll answer it and be unequivocally no. He's defense coordinator. I think the part that I've been able to do through 15 years as a head coach is you just understand there's going to be transition whenever these things happen. My first year as a defense coordinator, we went from a defense that was ranked, I believe, in the 80s to number 1, and the next year we dropped considerably. Just a lot of different change in personnel, and people learn to attack your scheme and where it is. Aaron and the defensive staff are a very intelligent crew. We've met a lot before last Friday, and we'll be met a lot afterwards, and we'll continue to grow and get better.
Aaron mentioned that I guess most of the scoring drives against you have been prolonged by a
Penalties.
penalty. Just, I mean, were there similarities between the two games, just in terms of what was happening, or just general penalties?
Yeah, so I think in the first game, we made a mention of it. I talked to the players involved. Obviously, we had a face mask. We had a post-snap penalty. We had 2 DPIs. We had a low hit on a quarterback, right? And those all those drives contributed to 20 points. This past weekend, much to the same. Obviously, we had a face mask early on that was in a low red that was on Ryan Mead. And I think in certain situations, like even the week before with Johnny, there's going to be certain fouls that happen during a game that it's just it's just part of the game, right? They're trying to reach and make. What we can't have is post-snap penalties and repeated issues. I made a special point. I watch everything, offense, defense, special teams, and there's a play when they get Taz for a post-snap penalty, and they're kind of involved in a scrum. They're kind of grabbing with a TV copy. You literally see the Kansas wide receiver blow a kiss to the sideline, right, and saw the reaction of those guys. So that was something they had probably tipped off the officials that they're trying to get across, and it was definitely something that they coached and got a reaction. So I made our guys aware of, right, that's not a normal sequence, right? So I think our guys have to learn restraint is very, very, very big part of the game, and we got to do a better job of that, even when you're provoked.
As part of the assessment, Coach, just taking a look at the depth chart and specifically the offensive line and maybe the back end of the defense, any personnel changes that you anticipate?
Yeah, I think anytime you add players or get players back, one of the downfalls or one of the difficult parts for a couple guys is they had not really gotten a lot of practice and reps in before those first games, and I think that reflected in the way they've been able to play. So we've been healthy now for about 2 weeks, and obviously get a lot healthier this week with a couple of those guys back on defense. But yeah, we get better with practice. A short week, I think, was also something that, as we look at it, we talked about it, preached about it, but it took one less day of practice for us, and it was something we definitely needed in the type of offense we were facing, and obviously the defense that we played against as well. So they had the same amount of prep time, right? But it was just a little bit different for our guys traveling and everything.
Evaluate your offense. They've had some big deficits they're
Yeah.
facing, but how would you evaluate what you've seen out of that group?
Well, I think we got to have an identity, right? Like, and be able to do some things and count on them and say this is what I like it to equate it to. Like when you hear people talk about us, an opposing coach, what do they say about us before and after the game? And you'd like to have some consistency there. Obviously, 2 opponents we haven't played and 2 new season opponents. But, Luke is obviously a very talented quarterback who's got a very good skill set. I mean, take a third and long and convert it into a touchdown and really not get touched, right? Just goes, they were bracketing Isaiah out to the field, which he's going to get. He's a very good receiver. They were going man coverage across the rest, and they had a middle post safety that Pat Bryant came in and gave a nudge, and that's all Luke needed. And, it went from a third and long to a touchdown. When you have that on tape, that's a very good thing. So I think that's part of an identity that we haven't really had since I've been here, and that's a different. So we're a different offense. Barry, the reason I brought him here was a lot of the stuff at the line of scrimmage with relief on the perimeter and do certain things. When people would load up and put the box in on against us, so that has to be there. But we have to be a little bit more consistent, I believe, offensively on early down runs, and that's going to be a big part of it. And just stay in sequence. I showed a play. I believe it was a 6th or 7th play of the game, defensively, where we had Xavier Scott pulled the trigger, came up, knocked the ball loose, and we had 8 guys within 5 yards of the football. They had 1, right, and ball just bounced up and got in his hands. That's one that you would really hope that would go the other way. And then on the flip side of it, we had 2 offensive passes that were being bobbled, at the catch, and they came up with interceptions. So the ball bounces in unique ways. You got to be able to overcome those situations. But I did point out to our guys, you got to create the way the ball bounces as well. So it's just one of those moments that we got to take a big learning step moving forward, but also not overreact to the moment.
You've been blocking some of that consistency on early down runs.
What's that?
What do you think has been maybe preventing finding that early down run consistency?
Well, two things. The teams that we played have been saying it. I think Reggie and Josh both have, been very good in practice, and it's carried over. We just haven't been able to break one of those. There's been literally in both games a couple snaps that you felt like if he just could pull his legs through one more tackle, it'd be a big play hit. So I think those things are going to come. I do think we just got to keep chopping. We just got to keep working and keep grinding and understanding those plays are going to pop and they're going to come, but you got to earn them. No one's going to give them to you.
Right, not that it makes it easier, but is the prep for a Penn State a little more familiar given their style and that you've seen them before?
Yeah, we have in a certain regard, but they do a lot. Penn State is primarily an 11 and 12 personnel team, but they have different guys within those personnel groupings. But that's majority of it. They play some 21. They have a couple other unique personnel groupings. I think one of the trademarks of James's teams is they play a lot of skill. They're deep. They do a tremendous job in recruiting, and they're allowed to do things there at Penn State that allow them to get a lot of skilled players in the program. And it seems like as soon as you have one leave, right, another one stands up right behind it. So that's the thing about Penn State. The volume of skill that can be on the field and be fresh is a challenge.
What's your next steps for your offensive line?
Next step for the what?
Offensive line.
Yeah, I think three things. From an offensive game plan standpoint, we got to figure out what we do well and be able to stick to it, be able to practice it, be able to execute it not only during the course of the week but on game day. Second thing is we probably need to have one of those plays just happen, right? Like I think once the confidence is a big part of this game, and I think especially in the run game, we haven't had one of those big plays happen yet, and when that does, that can be very, very contagious. And the third thing, that we got to be able to do as coaches is put our best players in the best position to be successful. And if that's moving guys around, if that's playing guys at different positions, if it's getting guys a rep at different techniques, that's what we got to do as coaches, and that's what we'll do this week. One more? Yeah.
In the spring and fall, you guys have talked about playing fast.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's carried over, please?
Yeah, so offensively, we always talk about see fast, no fast, play fast. And I think that's definitely it's showed at times. I think that's one of the ironic things in both ball games when we've gone 2-minute offense. You've had a lot of success defensively. You're at the discretion of what the offense wants to do and get our guys lined up and get our guys to play. But I would say that in general on defense, like we've gotten ourselves in a couple good scenarios and we just haven't been able to get off field on third down. Really all types of third down. We had a third and long, we had a third and short, we had a third and medium. That's got to be a big part of us. And then it's the third series of the game. The first two series results in touchdowns, and the third series we go 3 and out, right? And then turn around the fourth series, give one, and then create a turnover early in the second half, right? Like it's just like there's too much inconsistency in the results. I wouldn't say it's in the plays, but in the results is what matters, and that's what we got to be able to do. But you saw Xavier make a big play. You saw Dylan, rip the ball out, right? Like those are extra effort plays that you feel could be contagious, and even though they get unnoticed because we lost in a 2-score game, but as coaches we notice those things by far. Thank you.